The silence that wasn't empty, the galaxy had forgotten them. To most, humans were a myth, a ghost race spoken of in ancient scrolls and lost AI recordings. Historians debated their extinction like academics argued over the fate of stars swallowed by black holes. Some believed they'd never existed at all, just propaganda crafted by old empires to frighten children into obedience. Others claimed humanity was real once, but their purpose had ended in sacrifice, consumed in a war that had no victors, only scars. The scars, however, had begun to bleed again. It started with a ripple far beyond the galactic rim, where stars thinned and silence reigned. Sensors on a forgotten research station detected a breach, a tear in subspace so fine it first appeared as a glitch. The anomaly widened, stabilized, held. That was the first sign. The second came 3 days later, when the stars around it flickered and never came back. A black wound was growing in the fabric of reality. Admiral Valen of the Tarn Dominion stood aboard the observation deck of the warship Crown's Silence, watching the growing breach through the reinforced viewport. It was beautiful and wrong all at once. A shimmer of oil on water, a humming emptiness. It pulled at the soul, not physically, but through memory, like something long forgotten was trying to claw its way back. "Report," he said. "Still stable." "Admiral," said his XO, a cold-skinned Trellin. "No emissions, but hyperspace around the breach is folding in strange patterns. Our navigational AIs are refusing to compute near it." Valen didn't blink, and the barrier still intact, but pulsing. That word again, pulsing. It was no ordinary defense grid. It was alive. Ancient generators spun antimatter fields around the breach in geometric loops older than any empire still standing. They'd been installed thousands of years ago, powered by tech no one understood, feared. The archives referred to them simply as the Seal. And now, the Seal was breathing. Valen had read the forbidden texts. About the war before records. About the galaxy uniting against a threat that mocked unity. About the monsters that didn't want territory or wealth or conquest, but only to destroy, and to savor doing it. They had been locked away behind the barrier, and the ones who lured them in, who fought them while the rest fled, were said to be human. But no one believed that anymore, until the breach opened wide enough to see. The first shape to emerge wasn't monstrous. It wasn't even large. A single ship, matte black, sleek, and without visible engines, slipped through the veil like a needle through silk. It didn't broadcast, it didn't scan, it just floated. The Crown's Silence locked weapons and prepared countermeasures. But the black ship didn't move. Then it sent a message. Not in code, not in language, that it sent a memory. Valen staggered, clutching his head. So did half the bridge crew. Visions poured into them, cities burning under Leviathan shadows, screams across endless oceans, billions dying without reason. But there was something else. Humanvoices.com/steady, speaking not of vengeance, but duty. Then the memory ended. The black ship moved forward, and behind it, the fleet came, billions of them, not the monsters, humans, and they didn't look like any record from history. Their ships were dark, their architecture foreign, their faces when seen through energy projections were unreadable, masked or altered. Some bore metal graphs across their skulls, others had eyes that shimmered like compressed stars. Of them bore one symbol, etched onto armor and hulls alike for the Fathers. Panic tore through the known empires. Transmission delays made coordination impossible. By the time the Galactic Assembly convened a response, 30 border outposts had gone dark. The humans didn't fire first. They didn't speak. They moved like a tide, systematically clearing paths through uninhabited space, as if searching for something. A single message was sent across every open frequency. It was not a greeting. "We did our duty. Now, tell us, where are the Fathers?" No one knew what it meant, but everyone felt the weight behind it. Those ancient empires who had created humanity, who had molded them, enhanced them, then abandoned them, were long gone. And the children they left behind had returned, not as remnants, but as something else entirely. On the planet Vorga 7, where the breach's shadow finally touched a populated world, the skies blackened, cities powered down, shields flickered, and in the darkness, a single projection formed in the sky, the face of a woman, hairless but radiant, eyes like embers. She looked down, not with rage, but sadness. She spoke. "This is High Speaker Mira Solari. Humanity has endured the menace. We have fulfilled the purpose the Fathers gave us. We were not meant to live, but we did. We were not meant to win, but we did. And now we have one final task." She paused. Across thousands of systems, her voice echoed. "To cleanse the void of what remains." Panic exploded. Governments collapsed within hours. Civilian riots swept across core worlds. But the humans didn't attack. They waited, and the galaxy began to realize the truth. They had been protected not by weapons or treaties, but by human sacrifice. And now, the protectors had returned, changed, and no one knew what they were going to do next. What remains after fire? The message echoed longer than the humans themselves. Across every inhabited sector, across subspace, even through isolated deep-core networks, the same projection looped in perfect sync. High speaker Myra Solari, her features, smooth and ageless, her voice devoid of anger, delivered the final declaration. Humanity had completed its task, and now, they would finish what their fathers started, but no one knew what that meant. The Galactic Assembly, such as it was, reformed. In a panic, emperors, autarchs, prime scholars, and AI-conscious swarms convened in the oldest part of the known galaxy, neutral ground. Once a holy site, now just a hushed chamber of polished obsidian where words had more power than fleets. No one spoke. At first then, from the back of the chamber, the oldest voice whispered the name that made every heart shiver: humans. It was Chancellor Auric of the Loris Coalition, his skin translucent with age and his breath mechanically maintained by 3 softly humming med units. "They're not extinct," he said. "They're not lost. They were hidden." "No," growled Commander Rithfor of the Krathin war tribes. "They were abandoned." The room fell cold. "And now," continued Auric, "they have returned as something else. Something patient." The Trellan representative chimed in with an echoing mechanical rasp. "We must strike preemptively. The fleet they brought is not defensive, it's methodical, coordinated. They've mapped every core world. If they were seeking peace, they would have opened talks." "No," a voice cut in. It was sharp, clear. It belonged to Ambassador Chiré of the Vunari Confederacy, species once rumored to have fought beside humanity during the Ancient War. "They're not here for diplomacy," she said, her voice trembling. "They're here to finish something we all forgot." A silence settled on the room, thicker than vacuum. Then a new image appeared on every screen in the chamber, uninvited and untraceable. A recording, not of a speech or a ship or a threat. It was a memory. Battlefield, oceans long, drenched in fire, and the ashen remains of monstrous creatures. Figures in fractured armor, humans dragging the wounded to shelter, fighting beside strange alien allies now extinct, never turning from the black tide. The camera tilted upward, toward a monstrous serpentine leviathan descending from orbit, covered in jagged bone and plasma-tipped tendrils. The humans did not run, they screamed, but not in fear. In defiance. The footage ended. Then the voice of Myra Solari returned. Not in projection, but spoken live, raw and immediate. "We were created to die. We were abandoned to distract. We were left behind so the stars could forget. But we did not forget." Every terminal went dark. Every fleet sensor scrambled. Every AI shut down for 5 seconds. And then came the final sentence. "You were meant to rebuild. Instead, you erased. We are not your punishment. We are your..." Mirror, aboard the Zero-In Valiant, the last remaining deep scan vessel near the breach. Scientist Yella Maya stared into the now stable rift. She was no soldier. She didn't care about history or power. Her role was to observe, not decide. But as she watched the formations of human ships shifting beyond the rip, their movements were almost musical, not random, not military, rhythmic. "They're searching," she whispered. Her assistant, a Valkyrie hybrid named Elsh, tilted his frilled head. "Searching for what?" Yella blinked. "Not what. They'd asked for the fathers, but the fathers had died millennia ago. The humans had been waiting, still fighting in a prison galaxy carved out by sacrifice, somehow surviving, somehow evolving, and now, they'd returned to a galaxy that had deleted them like an obsolete protocol. "I don't think they want revenge," Yella said, still watching. Elsh snorted. "They vaporized 3 fleets yesterday." Yella nodded slowly. "Yes, but only after being fired upon first. They're not attacking indiscriminately. They're testing." "Testing what?" Yella turned to him, her eyes wide. "Whether we're still worth saving." On the fringes of known space, in a quiet asteroid system, a single Terran vessel drifted, smaller than the others. No weapons, no escorts, its only occupant, a woman with silver eyes and synthetic breath, sat at a console. She wore no armor, only a simple black robe etched with red thread symbols of the old Earth languages, preserved through memory, implants, and digital whispers. She activated a beacon. A hologram of Myra Solari appeared before her, flickering gently. "Report," Mira said. 500 systems scanned. the woman answered. 300 show active signs of deception, manipulation, decay. 50 have begun preparing countermeasures. 28 attempted first strikes. 4 show signs of genuine unity. Myra tilted her head. Only 4. The woman nodded. 4 who remember. Myra closed her eyes for a moment. Send emissaries. Tell them, the bloodline walks again. The light is not gone. We carry it still. And the others. Myra's eyes opened brighter this time. Watch, do not engage. Let the galaxy see itself through us. The woman bowed her head. For the fathers, she whispered. And so the second silence began. A silence where humanity did not destroy but reflected. Where their weapons stayed cold, but their presence made empires fracture. Where their ships hovered just outside capital systems, watching, waiting. And across the stars, the question spread like fire. If the dead could return to finish the war, what else had they brought back with them? When memory becomes judgment in the outer rings of the Zentari Republic, a cold wind howled across a synthetic plain on Station Vardex 3. The station sat perched on the edge of galactic space. Its purpose once purely scientific, a place of particle experiments, asteroid mapping, and dark matter analysis. Now, it was watching for ghosts. Senior analyst Ketran Vau stood at the edge of the main observation platform, hands clasped behind his back, his breath fogging up inside his helmet. He had been a child when the first breach opened. He remembered the stories, the black ships, the high speakers, the unified fleets vanishing in a single, blinding flash. He remembered the screaming broadcasts from Core Command, the silence that followed, and the humans, the impossible humans, not extinct, not degraded, returned. But not with vengeance, not with mercy, with something far more dangerous. Memory. A low tone echoed through the deck. One of the junior researchers looked up from her terminal. Director, signal from Vector 112 Gamma. It's them. Ketran's throat tightened. Bring it up. The main screen flickered, and the now too familiar pattern emerged. A Terran vessel, pitch black, silent, hanging in the void just outside the defense perimeter. Alone, no transmissions, no threat displays, but no one dared call it passive. Is it moving? He asked. The technician frowned. No sir, it's just watching. That's what they all did. Showed up without provocation, waited, not at capital planets, not at military posts, but at places of memory, battlefields, forgotten, tombs, sites of betrayal. It was becoming clear. Humanity wasn't hunting empires, they were hunting truth. Back in the Galactic Assembly Core, the last bastion of interstellar diplomacy was fracturing under pressure. Factions screamed across digital channels. Theories exploded like viruses through the network. They're judging us, barked a Hillary Noble. We need to show them strength. They want acknowledgement, countered a scholar of the Ligran archives. They want us to admit what was done. You mean what was done to them? Sneered a trader from the Zelvani conglomerate. None of us alive today were there. We owe them nothing. The arguments broke down, as they always did, until a voice no one expected cut through, a voice that hadn't spoken in over 100 cycles. The voice of Zedrain Kalai, the last surviving High General of the old Concordan alliance that had once fought beside humanity before vanishing into self-imposed exile. We do owe them something, Cole said, his voice old and gravel-thick. We owe them witness. The chamber fell still. When the monsters first came, he continued, we thought we were fighting beasts, but it was humanity who figured them out. The monsters didn't want territory, they wanted despair. They fed off it. Ko leaned forward, his eyes gleamed with a forgotten fire. We left them behind in the cage, sent them to die in our place. But they didn't die. They became the cage. They turned the trap into a war zone and held the line alone. And now we pretend we're afraid of their power. No, we're afraid of their memory. Because if they remember what we did. He didn't finish the sentence, he didn't have to dot in. A distant sector on the world of Calyx Prime, the humans spoke again. Not a fleet, not a speaker. Just a single entity, a humanoid synthetic. Left outside a major research compound with no weapons, no armor, no escorts. It was taken inside under heavy guard. For hours, it sat motionless. Then it whispered a message. You gave us language. To learn, we gave you silence to reflect. Now we return the gift. When asked its purpose, it answered, to deliver the first names. What names? The researcher asked. The machine looked at him, its artificial gaze unnerving. The names of those who remembered, and those who forgot. Then it opened its chest cavity and spilled out a scroll, an actual scroll, made of polymer and etched in laser-precise Terran script. 2 columns, no explanations. No commentary. Just names, worlds, leaders, bloodlines, battles. On one side, those who had defended Earth. On the other, those who had fled, exploited, betrayed. The machine made one final statement. You are not judged by your strength. You are not judged by your strength. You are judged by your choice. The stars are watching. Then it shut down. Back aboard the Terran flagship Sovereign Vale, High Speaker Mira Solari stood in the hall of Echo's an enormous chamber filled with preserved memories projected in midair. It was a cathedral of silence, of remembrance. Images of the past danced through light, humans dragging allies to shelter, detonating antimatter cores to shield alien cities, fighting in silence beneath collapsing stars. At the far end stood a new figure. Tall, armored. His chest plate bore a circular brand glowing faintly with crimson light. Report, Myra said. The figure knelt. All primary targets observed. Reaction patterns logged. Strategic systems remain unchanged. Deception is still dominant across the majority of core systems. And the anomalies? The figure paused. 5 worlds sent emissaries. 1 knelt. 3 asked forgiveness. 1 offered sanctuary. Myra raised a brow. Forgiveness, yes, and documentation. Real history. The kind not stored in government archives. She was silent for a long moment. Mark them as seeds. Seeds. High Speaker, yes, she said softly. If humanity falls again, they are where we begin next. The galaxy had seen the worst of humanity once before: starvation, extinction, desperation. Now they would see something new: judgment through memory, power without conquest, fire without flame. Because the dead race had come back, but not for war, for truth, and the stars had nowhere left to hide. The empire that tried to forget the Irelian ascendancy had once stretched across 9 spiral arms of the galactic frontier. It was ancient, arrogant, and had rewritten history so often that even its own citizens weren't sure what their species had once stood for. To them, humanity was a myth, a ghost, a footnote buried beneath layers of propaganda and celestial revisionism. But that changed when a Terran beacon appeared over Neareth Axi, the Ascendancy's jewel capital, a planet of floating spires, glass cities, and sky platforms carved from white stone. The beacon didn't broadcast a threat, it simply hovered in orbit, projecting a repeating message in perfect Irelian dialect. The stars remember. Will you? Emperor Kaivaran, cloaked in living silks and seated upon a throne woven from neural vines, sneered at the message. His ancestors had been among those who betrayed humanity during the War of the Caged. They had offered intelligence to the enemy, feeding locations of hidden Terran colonies in exchange for temporary safety. That safety had lasted less than a solar cycle, but the shame of that betrayal had long been erased. The Ascendancy's schools taught that humans had perished due to their own reckless arrogance. The Empire's archives held no mention of their sacrifice, nor of the hundreds of battles fought on alien soil to protect worlds that never repaid them. Kaivaran, like many rulers, believed that truth was a tool, until the truth came back with warships and scrolls, and yet, no weapons had been fired, no demand had been made. Just that question, will you? Deep within the Ascendancy's Ministry of History, Senior Archivist Revan Talos sat at his console, sweat pooling beneath his neck as he decrypted a Terran data cache dropped silently into the Ministry's system. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a threat. It was a record. Over 3,000 hours of footage, audio logs, battle journals, messages sent by dying soldiers, transmissions from alien commanders thanking humans for defending their species, footage of children hidden aboard collapsing colonies, cradled in armored arms as humans fell one by one against the monsters. Revan's hands trembled as he played a clip from Sector Villa 51. A group of human marines stood shoulder to shoulder with a now extinct aquatic race, holding a crumbling trench while orbital fire reigned above. Don't run, a young female soldier said. If we fall here, they get the children. Hold. They never ran, they never retreated, and they were never thanked. Revan rose from his chair and looked out the window toward the sky. Ship black as sorrow still hovered there, unmoving, waiting. What do they want? His assistant asked. A low-blooded historian only recently initiated into the Imperial record. Revan's voice was a whisper. Nothing, except for us to remember. Back in the Hall of Command, Emperor Kaivaran had heard enough. They've done nothing but hover and manipulate. He roared. I will not be judged by ghosts. His military advisor stood silent. Only one dared. Speak, Your Majesty. If we erase these broadcasts, if we delete the files, then the lie remains intact. The voice didn't come from the chamber, it came from every wall. The lights dimmed, and then she appeared. High speaker, Mira Solari. Her holographic projection stood calm, composed, unarmed. Her eyes scanned the room. Her gaze stopped on Caveronyu. Fear truth more than extinction, she said. He bared his teeth. We owe you nothing. Your kind is extinct in every record. We cleansed the archives. Myra nodded slowly. That is why we came. He rose from his throne. Leave now, or we will bring every gun to bear. Mira smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You've already fired, just not at us. You fired at your past. You fired at your past. You fired at memory. We are only what you left behind. And then she vanished. 3 days later, without a single human weapon discharged, Neareth the Ninth fell. Its orbit was flooded with Terran ships not firing, not invading but broadcasting every one of the Ascendancy's secrets. In every home, school, and market, screens played footage of what their ancestors had done. Teachers wept. Soldiers resigned. Streets filled with peaceful protests from species that had long been second-class citizens. The Empire fractured not through war, but through truth. Entire noble families lost their influence overnight, and when the Terran vessels finally left orbit, leaving behind only a single line of text burned into the moon's surface, the message was clear. Memory is not a weapon, it is a mirror. You broke it. Elsewhere, in the Valkyrie trade ring, 5 more Terran ships entered orbit above neutral systems. Again, no threats, no weapons raised, just black ships and the silent pressure of presence. But this time, one world responded differently. The world of Luria's 2 activated a beacon of its own. From the ocean's surface, a tower emerged, ancient, crystalline, etched with markings only Terrans could recognize. A long-lost monument once built by the waterborn Vela to honor the humans who saved them 3,000 years ago. The Vela had remembered. They came to the surface. They sent a message in the old Earth tongue. Our debt was never paid. Our gratitude never faded. We remember the songs of fire, and the hands that pulled us from ash. For the first time in centuries, the Terran ships responded not with war, but with a salute. The skies above Luria's lit up in ceremonial lights, and, across the galaxy, a new term began to echo: the remembered. Worlds who chose truth. Species who kept history alive. Beings who would not forget. The dead race had no need for conquest. They carried the greatest power of all, memory, and the will to make others face it. The empire that chose fire, the Saan dominion, was not known for restraint. It had survived for 1,000 generations, not through diplomacy or progress, but through fire and fear. Its ships were blunt wedges of steel and plasma. Its rulers demanded loyalty with titanium claws and orbital executions, and its archives held no illusions. They knew what they had done to humanity, and they didn't care when the Terran vessels arrived, black and silent above the Dominion's core world of Dracolis, were greeted not with curiosity, but with rage. The Dominion's Warbringer-class dreadnoughts surged into formation. 10,000 cannons aimed skyward. Fighter squadrons deployed in swarms. No diplomatic channels were opened. No attempts at understanding. Instead, the voice of Supreme Warlord Karth Voxer blared across the system, in a frequency meant to shatter eardrums and cause panic. To the dead, return to your tombs. We do not kneel to ghosts. We do not weep for the past. We burn it. Silence answered him. The Terran ships remained motionless, until one moved. A single, sleek craft detached from the formation and glided toward orbit. It was neither large nor bristling with weapons. It had no escort, no shield signature, just a name etched in its hull. Remembrance of Voxer sneered. Targeted. 1 torpedo was launched, then 2, then 50. The remembrance didn't move. Every weapon detonated harmlessly in the space around it, deflected by a distortion field so dense it bent light, warped gravity, and silenced fire itself. Then the remembrance spoke, not in words, in memories. Across every screen on Dracolis, images flooded in, but these were no carefully curated broadcasts. These were raw, unfiltered downloads into public networks, security channels, military archives, even into the very implants of citizens. Soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching their skulls as ancestral guilt poured into their minds. Children screamed in classrooms as they felt what it was like to die in the trenches beside forgotten human allies. Old men fell to their knees as 1,000 Terran faces passed before their eyes, dying, bleeding, holding the line so others could flee. It wasn't just history, it was experience, emotion, pain, memory, rendered into pure neural signal, and at the center of it all, one phrase echoed in every language: "This is the weight you buried. You will carry it now." In the Dominion Citadel, Voxer roared in fury. send everything, purge the orbit, reduce them to debris, but his fleet captains didn't respond. They were screaming. One by one, the bridge crew collapsed, eyes wide, drowning in visions of forgotten sacrifices and battlefield screams. One officer sobbed as he clutched the nameplate of his ancestor, an officer once hailed as a hero, now revealed to have abandoned human allies during the first Void Siege. The Dominion's command structure unraveled not from destruction, but from reckoning. Outside, the Terran fleet remained untouched. And then, in a move no one could understand, they left. No invasion, no retaliation. They simply turned, vanished into slipspace, and left the Dominion bleeding from within. But Voxer was not done. In his madness, he activated Protocol Redlighter Scorched Star Directive, once designed to destroy key galactic gates in the event of a full-scale rebellion. He used it on himself. 12 antimatter charges ignited beneath Dracolis' core. The planet fractured, then imploded, sending shockwaves through the system. Over 10 billion lives were lost in one scream of fire. The Dominion had chosen not to be judged, so they chose annihilation instead. News of Dracolis' fall spread like radiation. Worlds trembled. Leaders re-evaluated their history texts. Billions began searching for records once buried or dismissed, hoping they could prove their ancestors had helped humanity instead of abandoning it. But it wasn't just fear that grew. It was hope. Because in the wake of the Dominion's suicide, something unexpected happened. The Remembrance returned. It didn't orbit another empire. It didn't send warnings or demands. It came to a dying colony on the edge of a collapsed wormholes hold where no known civilization had ever fought beside humanity. The colony was on the brink of starvation, crops dead, systems failing. The Terrans deployed a single beacon and broadcast a simple message. One of your ancestors died, shielding human children from orbital fire. You never knew, but we did. You are not forgotten. Moments later, a fleet of Terran supply ships arrived, dropping food, medicine, and power cores. And then they left. No thanks required, no records requested, just remembrance. That act broke the galaxy's silence in a way no threat ever could. For the first time in thousands of years, empires began telling the truth. Museums opened. Statues rose dedicated to Terran soldiers, whose names had been erased. Historians uncovered records hidden in decayed satellites. The phrase "we remember" became more than a slogan. It became a vow. But not all were moved. Not all wanted to be remembered. In the far reaches of space, in the Sarith Enclave, a secret war was beginning, not against the Terrans, but against truth itself. A cabal of powerful worlds had begun forging a coalition, not of peace, not of remembrance, but of eradication. Their goal was simple: destroy the Terrans before their memory unraveled everything. And so the great question emerged: would the galaxy embrace the truth, or try to kill it one last time? Humanity stood ready for either, because now they were no longer ghosts. They were the reckoning, and they would not blink first. The coalition that feared the lighting the obsidian halls of the Sarith Enclave. 12 banners hung suspended in anti-gravity. Each bore the crest of a galactic power long feared and longer resented. Beneath those banners stood 12 delegates, cloaked in status and silent species who shared nothing except one common fear. Humanity remembered. The Anti-Remembrance Coalition, known in whispers as the Shroud, was born not out of hope but out of terror that had watched the Terran fleet do what no power in known history could: fracture the Dominion without firing a shot, destabilize empires using memories, and spark revolutions with truth. And worst of all, they did it without conquest, without demands. They didn't even want power, but the leaders of the Shroud knew something most did not. When a species like humanity chooses silence over wrath, they're not weak, they're waiting. The Shroud didn't wait. They moved swiftly, pulling ancient codes from forgotten war satellites. They forged silent alliances with black market AI clusters from dead sectors. They resurrected a technology banned since the Cataclysm era: Norwave engines, devices capable of erasing matter, memory, and signal, eradicating even the concept of an enemy. Their plan was elegant: strike Gaia, not the current Gaia but the deep seed vaults, the AI cores and memory banks hidden in humanity's fallback cradles, places seeded centuries ago by high speakers in case they ever had to vanish again. Destroy the past, and the present would unravel their target. Vault Sigma 3, buried in the heart of a drifting moon, cloaked since the last flare of the Monster Wars, a place holding records of every Terran death, sacrifice, and a lie, the proof of what had truly happened. If they could erase it, humanity's power would dim. And so, Operation Eclipse began. The strike was surgical. 6 cloaked warships entered uncharted space near Sigma 3, deploying null-wave torpedoes in complete silence. The moon's defenses activated just as predicted and fell just as quickly. Inside the vault, automated protocols began wiping files to prevent compromise. Flames licked the edges of humanity's preserved past. Terran AI constructs screamed into dead channels as their memories were ripped away. And then everything stopped. Not because the Shroud had succeeded, because something had arrived. It wasn't a fleet, it was one ship. No engines, no weapons, no mass signature. It simply existed, like a concept suddenly made real. A projection flared open. In the heart of the Sereth flagship. And a voice spoke, not loud but in every frequency, every dialect, and every species mind. You target the past because you fear the future. The Shroud's leaders recoiled. Firewalls collapsed. Mind shields ruptured. The oldest among them, who remembered the real war, the war against the monsters, shook in recognition. They had heard that voice before. In ancient times. In the trenches, in the dark. When the monsters came and only the humans stood between annihilation and survival, the projection shifted. Dozens of faces flashed, young, old, scarred, peaceful, human faces, but the voice remained one. We are not here to conquer, we are here to witness. If your legacy cannot survive our memory, then it deserves to die. One by one, the null-wave engines shut down. Not destroyed. Refused, as if the universe itself had decided no. In the aftermath, Vault Sigma 3 activated its full protocol for the first time in millennia. Its outer layer peeled away, revealing not weapons, but a council. 12 Terran figures, neither fully alive nor AI, emerged. They called themselves the Remembered Assembly, constructed from the minds of history's greatest human leaders, soldiers, artists, and orators. They didn't declare war, they declared a galactic gathering, a convocation of every species who had ever allied with or fought beside humanity. From the insectoid Harnathi who remembered Earth's oceans, to the last child of the Cyprax choir who still sang human lullabies. And across the galaxy, hundreds of species answered, not because of fear but because they remembered. The Shroud collapsed overnight. Not from battle. From abandonment. Its members either fled, turned on each other, or surrendered to their own citizens, many of whom had been touched by Terran memories and now rejected their leaders' lies. The Terrans once again did not retaliate. They simply broadcast one phrase from Vault Sigma 3. Let history stand. Let no child be taught lies. Let every loss be known. Let every hero be named. And slowly, across the stars, truth took root again. Yet something darker loomed in the void between galaxies. Where the old monsters had once stirred, something moved. Unnatural. Vast. Hungry. The Terrans knew it. They had always known it, and they had been preparing. Every speech, every reminder, every beacon of memory wasn't just about the past. It was about getting the galaxy ready for what was coming next. The memory that became a weapon beyond the edge of the Orion Fold. In a place where maps ended and silence reigned, space began to shudder. Not tremble, not warp. Shudder. It was as though the void itself was flinching. The creatures returning from that emptiness had no name, because the very concept of naming them had died in the First War. They were not ships, not organisms, not intelligences. They were ... Hunger, shape, gravity bent into malice. Time itself screamed around their passage. The monsters were returning, but this time, they didn't find silence. They didn't find fractured empires, broken alliances, or scattered resistance. They found a signal, one broadcast in every known language, from every known planet and starport, repeated endlessly across the void. We remember, we survived. We are not the same, and at its source, positioned directly along the monster's incoming path. Hung Gaia reborn, not the Earth of old, but its echo, a world built in orbit around a neutron star, a fortress shaped like a memory. It bore one name etched into its crust with million-kilometer-wide strokes of plasma mining. HFY and HFY. Monsters surged forward. Leviathans darkened starfield. Moons shattered beneath their gravity. Systems bent under their mass. And then the stars themselves ignited. Dozens of them, prepared by Terran staff augurs, converted into conscious nova bombs, exploded in precise harmony. The monsters reeled, not from pain, from confusion. This wasn't a defense they had seen before. It wasn't fear-driven. It was strategy. They pressed on. But at every system, every path, every approach, they found resistance, not in strength, but in remembrance. Ruined human outposts activated ancient protocols. The ghosts of human AI minds, some long dead, some reborn, flooded the monsters with memory-encoded attacks, pain signals, empathy shards, neural nets infused with trauma and sacrifice. The monsters staggered. They had never encountered enemies who weaponized meaning. And then the Terrans arrived in force. The new Terran fleet was not like before. It was not black, sleek, or terrifying. It was bright. Silver and gold hulls gleamed in starlight. Energy shields pulsed like heartbeats. Each ship bore a name from human history, not of warlords or generals, but martyrs, artists, and thinkers. The flagship, the Anne Riley, named after a nurse who died shielding alien children during the first monster war. Aboard that ship stood the High Speaker, not a warrior, but a child, 11 years old, hair like flame, voice like thunder in a vacuum. Her name was Maya Sunfold. She did not declare war. She opened a live feed across the galaxy, and she told a story. It was the story of what the monsters had done, what they had taken, what they had made humanity become, and what humanity had chosen instead. Not revenge, not silence, memory. She spoke of Terran cities rebuilt in orbit, of alliances forged not through treaties, but through acts of compassion, of a people who never forgot, not because they couldn't but because they chose not to. And when her story ended, she looked straight into the camera and said, "We will not run, we will not hide. If we fall standing, and if we rise, the stars will never forget us again." And then, she smiled, the monsters opened fire. What followed cannot be called a battle. It was a clash of ideas. The monsters wielded entropy, decay, the collapse of order. Humanity wielded memory, unity, and the echo of every name lost to time, for every Terran ship destroyed. 2 more came behind it, not because they were ready, but because they had prepared others. Dozens of species, trained in secret across centuries, emerged from obscurity equipped with Terran tech, Terran courage, Terran stories. The monsters began to falter, because every world they approached remembered what they were, and every mind they tried to invade was now lined with shared human history, uploaded like firewalls of spirit. The monsters had fed on the broken, but now they faced the unbreakable. In the end, the final blow came not from a weapon but from a moment. One Leviathan, larger than moons, pierced the core defenses of Gaia. Reborn. It reached the vault. It tried to absorb the central memory court, the last vestige of original Terran suffering, encoded in quantum filaments. But as it touched the stream of memories, it hesitated, and it stopped for the first time. The galaxy saw a monster pause, not because of fear, but because it felt, if only for an instant, the pain of a mother losing a child, the courage of a boy holding the line, the grief of a medic who failed to save a life, the hope of a species that never should have survived. And it broke the Leviathan, unraveled, not from fire, from remorse. The war ended not with silence, but with a signal. The void remembers, and it grieves. The monsters vanished into the deep again, not destroyed, but changed. Maybe one day they'd return, but they would never be the same. Across the stars, a new phrase was etched in 1,000 languages. In the end, it was not war that saved us. It was the story. And so, humanity did not build monuments, they built libraries, they built schools on worlds where children of all species learned together, and every student began their studies with one ritual, reciting the names of the fallen, not as an obligation, but as a promise that memory is stronger than fear, that light outlives darkness, and that the dead do not stay silent when the living choose to remember.